for more of you to come in. So I'm Patty from Copperfield. I'm sure we know most of you. And I guess the only problem is this is actually just tonic water, but I said people should wear funny hats and have great drinks and I give prizes. So now I'll just, Hannah, you have a hat. So there we go, by luck of the draw. But we're here to get started with this year's Educator Night. I have all sorts of little housekeeping things. I've emailed a lot of you, but Money for Schools is coming up, and that is, oh, chat is enabled, great. Money for Schools is going to be the weekend of November 4th. You can sign your school up. It's really easy to sign up, although you do need your school's tax ID number. And that weekend, everybody from your school that shops in any of the Copperfields, 20% of their purchase goes to your school. And you can get it, Jamie's popping that sign up in the chat right now. You can get the money as a check, or you can get the money as a gift card to be spent at Copperfields. And the cool thing is, if you have a gift card, then you continue to get your 20% off educator discount after you get. So I mean, it gives back double. So I highly recommend. Every year we have people who come in and they're like, wait, my school didn't sign up. And it's like, no, I'm sorry, they didn't. But think about it. It's a lot of fun and it's easy to do. And it counts for anything in the store. So if people are doing their Christmas shopping, 20% of what they spend goes to you. So highly recommend that. As far as Educator Night goes, our shopping night will be on Monday, the 24th from 7 to 9. The store will be open only for educators. And so you'll be able to come in, shop for anything with your educator discount. You too can do your Christmas shopping. You'll still get your 20% off on puzzles and socks and candles and everything else. So it's kind of a good night for you. And also you can shop for your school. If you have purchase orders with you, that's great. We can process those that night. Next Friday, we have, I can't see your hands, right? Have you put your hands up? But we have Max Greenfield, who was in Veronica Mars, and he was in Ugly Betty, and was in, help me out here, Jamie, what's the other one we just said?
Veronica Mars.
We have Veronica Mars I got, but what's the one that he's, oh, New Girl. Anyway, he has a picture book. The picture book is called A Book Is Not a Present. And it's, from what I hear, it's actually very fun. So he'll be at Copperfields at 7 p.m. And there's a whole lot of very giddy people that have been getting very excited all day that will have the lovely Max Greenfield here. So that will be fun. And we're going to make it a kids event in the evening. So there will be some silly plans that we have to show him that books can be gifts. So we're looking forward to that. In November, on the 15th, I have just got offered Suma. I'm not going to do her last name correctly. It's Subramanian. She has a book called Namaste is a Greeting, and it's a beautiful book. And I think it's a picture book. It would do well at any school. So I'll be emailing out that. And if you're interested in having her come to visit your schools, please let me know. In January, I already have some stuff signed up. We've got a graphic novelist coming through. We've got an illustrator coming through. So there's a lot. So stay in touch, open your emails if you're interested in doing stuff with us, because those things get booked up really quickly. We are going to start up kids book reviews again, where you have your class of kids write a review of different books, or when every kid reviewed Percy Jackson, it was interesting, but it got a little redundant. Oh, Heidi, nice hat. But we're going to set that up. And so for a week, we'll display the kids' reviews in the store with the books. And it's just fun for them to feel acknowledged and their books go up. I've had parents come in and take a picture of the kids right next to their book. So it seems to really resonate with everybody. So we'll have a sign-up sheet for that, like a calendar, and you can sign up for a certain week. We have an ongoing banned books window. We're having kids write reviews of banned books and sort of contrasting like why it's banned and why they think it shouldn't be. And that stays on the street where people can read it when they come by. It's a really good topic. Obviously, it's really important. So that is another thing you'll be able to sign up for. So I'll be sending all these things out, all these calendars out that you can sign your school up for kids book reviews and banned book reviews. And I'll give you a format to use. Last week we did a bookstore school visit with Mac Barnett and John Clausen with their new Three Billy Goats Gruff. And we did a bookstormer visit. And that is, if you don't know, a couple of years ago, pre-pandemic, we would go to schools. I always try to take authors to 3 schools, 2 fine and one usually low income, so that by the end of the day, we've sold enough books that the publisher and author are happy, but at the same time, all the kids have gotten to see an author. And it started to really bother me that the kids in those schools were always a little disconnected because they weren't going to get a book. I mean, it's just not part of their world that they would buy a book. So I started a foundation called the Bookstormer Foundation. And when we go to a Title I school, we buy every kid a book. And it's been really charming. It's been, the kids get so excited, and it's so hard sometimes to convince them that they really get the book to keep. The author signs it and puts their name in it. I had a 12-year-old at one school who said, "This is the first book I've ever owned," which is like foreign to me, that you would be 12 and not have owned a book. And so we will continue to do that. Jamie has dropped the Bookstormer Foundation link in the chat. If you're at a Title I school, there's a place there where you can sign your school up, because we try to rotate. I'm not going to go to the same school twice. I want to spread the wealth as much as I can, literally. And speaking of wealth, if you have any, you can also donate, because it's just me grassrooting it and asking people for money. So feel free to be a part of that. It's eye-opening to see how much it matters to kids. I mean, the difference in their behavior from when they're like politely disconnected, listening to an author, to the point where they're holding the book and waiting to get it signed, and suddenly they're part of the conversation. And it's just amazing. So I think it's really important. And I'm not very good at pitching, but anyway, if you have extra money lying around, feel free to donate to Bookstormer, and also sign your school up if you're at a Title I school. That is the beginning of our evening, and I'm going to turn it over. We have this great new picture book that I was able to sit in on and hear about, and I just thought it was, I don't know, I thought it was a topic that doesn't get talked about enough. So the first author that we have visiting us tonight, I was trying to count how many books she has out. It's well over 30. And they're all over the place. So it's not like a series. She's got all these great ideas. There's the Quiet book, you may remember, or the book Ducks. She had Interstellar Cinderella, the Caldecott honor book, Outside In. She's just, every time I turn around, it's like, wow, another new cool book by Deborah Underwood. So she's here tonight to talk to you about her newest book that just came out, called Walter Had a Best Friend, illustrated by Sergio Ruzier. I got it. And she's here to say hello to you. She's going to share her screen and show you her new book. Unmute real quick, Deborah. Wait. I do that all the time. Okay, and now here she is.
After 2.5 years, you would almost think that I would have this down, but I don't.
So
So
it makes us all human.
well,
Okay.
I'm pretty human. It's
Yeah.
pretty safe. So
Okay.
anyway, thank you. I'm so happy to be here with you to introduce you to my new book baby, Walter Had a Best Friend, which just came out a couple days ago, and it does have these beautiful illustrations by Sergio Ruzier. And I thought I would just read the very first part of the book if I can manage to figure out how to get my screen shared again. So I'm going to give that a shot. Let's see. Is that coming through okay? Yes. Okay. Walter had a best friend. Walter had a best friend named Xavier. They hiked up the hill together. They painted pictures together. They were quiet together. Walter and Xavier were best friends. Until quietly, slowly, they weren't. Xavier and Penelope invited Walter to a ball game, but it wasn't the same. Walter's world quietly, slowly changed. And I'm going to stop sharing there. So what happens next in the book is not what you might expect. The two of them do not reconcile and become friends again. What actually happens is we see Walter alone being very sad and very angry and very depressed until finally, after enough time has elapsed, that when the sun pokes its way through his curtains, he decides he's going to try to go for a hike by himself. And so he does, and he starts to take the same old trail that he used to take with his friend Xavier, but he decides to try a new trail. And on that trail, he meets somebody who has the potential of maybe becoming a new friend, and is kind of foreshadowed or backshadowed on the back cover by Sergio, this cute little badger there. So this book came about in a very interesting way. Often my picture books are very labored and I go through tons and tons of drafts and I end up with a stack like this. With this book, I actually wrote it because I was going through a similar experience in my own life. A couple people that I cared very deeply about were sort of drifting away, not because of any malice or because of anything other than just shifting life circumstances. And I really felt like I was losing my family, and it was just such a hard time for me. And so one day I actually just sat down in the corner of my living room behind me here, and I just started writing this story and just crying and writing and crying and writing and crying. And when I finished, after I let it cool off a little bit, I sent it to my agent and said, do you think this is a book? And she said, I think it is, but we weren't quite sure. But she ended up sending it to this editor that I had been working with. And the editor called her back crying in 5 minutes and made an offer on the book. So I think that there is something so universal about this experience of losing a friend, and especially losing a friend when you can't quite wrap your head around why. One of my college friends just got the book, and I was really surprised. He texted me just last night and he said, I think this is probably my favorite book. And he told me that he cried. And I was like, he was not the first person I would think would cry reading a book. But it seems like when I tell people about it, so many people will respond with a story about when that happened to them when they were a kid, or when that happened to them as they were an adult. And it just feels like it's such it's just an experience that we share, and often we go through it several times in our lives. And I didn't know of any books that addressed it. So, so what I'm hoping that this book will do is be there for kids who are going through something like this, or will go through something like this, and let them know that the really big emotions that they have are normal and fine, and let them know that they're not alone, and also let them know that they can get through it and find happiness again the way Walter did. So I'll be really curious if you use it in your classroom with kids. I'd be really interested to hear how they respond to it, because I hope so much that it will provide some comfort to kids who are going through just this very confusing, especially the first time it happens to you, this very confusing, the twists and turns that friendships can sometimes have, especially when you're young. So I just want to share one kind of funny story about it. And the reviews it's gotten, I'm really honored to say it's gotten a couple starred reviews, which is really thrilling. But the reviews, when they talk about Walter, one of them said, Walter is a rodent-like animal. And one said, well, Walter is a mouse. And one is a rodent, whatever thing. And I actually always thought Walter was a possum. And I was so excited because there are not a lot of books about possums. And I was like, yes, we finally have a good possum representation in books. So I actually emailed Sergio and I said, Sergio, what is Walter anyway? And he wrote back, oh, I don't know, with a big exclamation point. And he said, sometimes I just draw animals and I don't even know what they are. And I kind of thought that was pretty funny until I was getting ready to talk about the book for the first time. And I realized I had no idea how to pronounce Xavier. So I was Googling how to pronounce the name of my character. So we have a character that the author can't pronounce, and one that the illustrator doesn't know what it is. And yet here we are, we have a book. So anyway, I hope you enjoy, I hope you enjoy Walter Had a Best Friend. So thank
And then
you.
we also, I messaged Deborah earlier today. I'm like, I know Sergio, I've met him several times. How do you say his last name? So it's on all layers. We don't know.
It's very, yes. And the thing is, and I told you about this wonderful resource. I think it's called teachingbooks.net, where they ask authors and illustrators to record their names. So fortunately, Sergio had done that, and I had to listen to it before the first time I talked about the book too. So you can actually hear them pronounce their names, which is so useful, just so we get it right. So anyway, so thank you so much. I'm really happy to have had the chance to be here, and I hope that you enjoy the book.
I'm sure they will. And what I like about it too is it doesn't resolve. It doesn't make him have a new best friend. You don't say that, it just opens possibilities. But so often books try to wrap things up neatly and have everybody be happy again. And that's not the process, So I think it's good.
Yeah. And the thing is, I think the thing that is so difficult about this situation, just as I was thinking about it, is it's not even like they had a fight and he kind of could learn something that he could take forward. I mean, there's nothing to learn from this situation other than simply how to get through it and come through on the other side. And I think there are a lot of situations in life like that. So I really hope kids will negotiate that.
Well, in 3 school visits yesterday, we had 6 Penelopes. So people need to be careful that they don't.
It's just the way it is, right? I mean, it's just those friendships are so heartbreaking, and just the first time you go through stuff like this, it's really fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, and thanks for being here, and you're welcome to stick around. And does anybody have any questions they want to throw in the chat real quick so I can keep Deborah on the spot 1 moment longer? It's okay if you don't. I agree. Somebody said they love the illustrations, and that's what's so nice about it, is it's just they're so wonderfully slightly sad and sobering because you're right there with the characters, but it's also fun to look at. Is it available yet at Copperfield's? Yes, ma'am, it is. Well, except I have 1 copy here in my room, but yes. Okay, well then we'll let you stand down and do a little bit of talking here. What I'm going to do tonight, most people get the book list. I sent out what we're going to be talking about. As usual, I probably won't go in any particular order, but if you didn't get it, I don't know, Jamie, if we figured out a way to drop it into the chat. Probably not, but we can send it out to you, and I'll have the book list at the bookstore next week along with all of these books. So I'm not gonna, I would like to say I'll go alphabetically or by genre, but I probably won't. It makes it fun for you. It makes your notes really interesting. Our next author tonight, who I've not met until tonight, which is great because I've always loved her books. Probably, I would say maybe her most famous book is All the World. My favorite of her books up until now, well, there's 2. One is One Dark Bird. I think it's this most beautiful book. And it was a teacher book a couple of years ago. And then the book Bob Not Bob, which slays me every time I read it. And you have to read it as though you have a cold. That's all I'll say. But she has a new chapter book coming out that came out just this week. I will have it in the bookstore by next week, called Lolo's Light. So I'd like you to give a very warm welcome to the lovely Liz Garton Scannon.
Thank you, Patty. It is so nice to be here, and it's nice to meet you. And I'm flattered. I'm in a hotel in San Antonio, Texas, because I'm doing a week of school visits. And so I just spent this afternoon reading One Dark Bird and looking at videos of murmurations with 4th graders. So I'm so glad that that you love that book. It's a fun book to share with students. And I'm really happy to have been invited tonight. I'm really happy to see Deborah, who I haven't seen in years. So yay, hi, Deborah. If anybody knows my name, it is via picture books, because that's what I've mostly done over the years. Lots and lots of picture books, but I am a very occasional and very slow middle grade novelist. It amazes me that people have novels coming out once a year, because I've got 2 and there've been like 5.5 years in between them. That seems to be about my pace. My first middle grade novel was The Great Good Summer that came out, like I said, about 5 years ago. It's about a 7th grader, and it's sort of, I think of it as sort of for 4th through 8th graders. And this book, Lolo's Light, which just came out this month, is my brand new one. And it is also about a 7th grader, but it's definitely upper middle grade. So I think of it as sort of 5th through 9th grade. In terms of readers, and it's interesting following Deborah, because this book in many ways is a story about navigating grief. And it's a different kind of grief than the picture book grief. But I wrote it before the pandemic. And one thing that has been really interesting to me as going through this journey of revising it and then bringing it to market during this time is that in many ways, I think as humans, we're experiencing collective grief. And when we don't say that we see it, it confuses kids, I think, whether those are little kids who are likely to be processing in elementary school classrooms and through picture books, or middle grade tweens and YA teens who are processing through older books. And so I'm really in favor of being honest with kids about what we've experienced and what they're experiencing and what's hard and what we see as ways through things. So this book, Lolo's Light, is the story about a 12-year-old girl, Millie, who experiences a tragedy very early in the book. And it's this is not a spoiler because it's actually on the flap copy. The night after she babysits for her first time, after she's home and tucked into bed, the baby that she was watching over dies of SIDS. And even though she was not responsible in any way, she was there, and she wonders, along with grieving this sweet, sweet baby, she wonders if there is something that she could have done to change the course of things. And then she realizes at some point in the book that there isn't anything she could have done. And in some ways that's worse, right? So there's like that sense of feeling responsible, and then that acknowledgement that really we're not, and that sometimes things happen. And how do we move through that anyway? The other big themes in this book are a bit of magical thinking, which I think is actually one of the stages of grief, even though it's never really talked about that way. She becomes really entranced by a light coming from this neighbor's home, from the home where the baby Lolo lived, and likes to imagine that it means that things are okay. And then the other piece of the story is that there's a chicken hatching project in her science classroom. And that's the kind of concrete tethering that I used to keep me attached to the story as I was writing it, and that I hope that your students will use as they're reading it, because it's a really grounding piece of the narrative. And I thought that I would just read one tiny bit from part of the chicken story. This happens pretty late in the book, and they're doing one of their 2 candling processes, which is when you hold a light up to the egg to find out if the egg is fertile and if things are still going well in there. Millie, understandably, is pretty nervous about this because she can't believe she's in charge of yet more fragile creatures. As soon as Millie walked into science class, she understood why Ms. Fritz kicked her out at lunch. And it wasn't so she could eat her mean-spirited egg sandwich in peace. On the whiteboard in block letters was one word: candling. Today was their last chance to check to see if all the eggs were still viable. Day 17. After this, the chicks would be too big to even see properly inside the eggs. After this, they'd need to be left alone to finish developing in peace. After this was lockdown, when nobody would be allowed to touch the eggs or even be allowed to open the incubators till the chicks hatched, this was it. Millie knew that Miss Fritz hadn't invited her in at lunch because she did not want her freaking out until the last possible minute. It was like when Tess and Millie were little, before Lucy was even born, when their mom would have them nearly inside the pediatrician's office before admitting to them where they were going and why. Spoiler alert, shots. The freakouts were just as bad as they would have been, but shorter, less of a lead up. That's what Mom said, and Ms. Fritz was obviously just as sneaky. Millie sucked in all the air she could handle, candling again. Okay, and then I'm just going to skip a paragraph or two, and we're gonna have her holding up the egg. Millie did what she needed to do. She did what the exceptionals needed her to do. Her group is named the Exceptionals. Eliza handed an egg to her, and when she shined the light through the shell, it was nearly black, filled up with chicken. Much more chicken than the last time they'd done this. And then another, the same thing, a chick, alive, like a black hole, she said, so dark, but so full and dense and powerful. And I'll stop there. So I hope that some of you will spend a little time walking through this story with Millie, and that if you have the right student at the right time, that maybe you'll share her with them too. And I really am grateful to have had this chance to talk about it with you.
Well, Liz, thank you so much. And this book will be at the store, and I'll be sure to have, again, I'm going to have One Dark Bird back in, and Bob Not Bob, but Lolo's Light, I've been hearing about it for quite a while, and I'm looking forward to reading it. Everything I've heard about it is pretty amazing. So I appreciate you taking the time. Now what you guys should do, you and Deborah should get off and then start another Zoom so you can chat. We got you this close.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Okay, everybody. So now we're gonna start talking about some more books. Those guys are really cool. I'm very glad they were here. And I'm just going to start. So at the end of the alphabet is the letter W. This book is What If? And now if I move too much, you'll realize that I'm not in the bookstore. This is a backdrop. My hands go away. So I can't really hold the books up. What If 2 is another book, additional serious scientific answers to absurd hypothetical questions. The cover shows a dragon riding on top of a 747. If you don't know these books, they're so great for kids who are just fascinated by just the weirdest, craziest scenarios, and they'll answer things. The first book came out just before the pandemic, I think. And kids and adults come up with the questions, but they also have this kid feel to them. Can all of the world's bananas fit inside all of the world's churches? My friends have had an argument for a little over 10 years now, and they take the time to figure it out. And I think that's very funny. So it's a good one to just have in the classroom, like if you have SSR, points where kids are going to just want to pick it up and see what's in here and how they figured it out. Pretty great. So again, this is called What If 2 by Randall Munro. Additional serious questions, serious answers to hypothetical questions. I guess I kind of grabbed from sort of a sciencey stack, so we'll stay with that. This is geographics. It's very cool. It's all sorts of stuff about geological things in the universe, but all using infographics. And it's fascinating to look at anyway, whether it's the size of continents or topography or active volcanoes. They have all these different ways of showing information. And it won't show too well to you, but again, I was thinking of kids who are curious, who maybe don't have the attention span to sit down and read an entire chapter at quiet time, but who are going to get fascinated by each and every spread, from eclipses and galaxies and what else we have? Water, biomes, hurricanes, the different sizes of hurricanes, and it's beautifully put together. So I thought this would be fun for that curious kid. Geographics by Regina Jimenez. Okay, well, now I'm going to jump around since I said I wasn't. This is for your older kids, not teens. This is still okay for, I would say 5th through 8th. It's by Colin Malloy, and it's called The Stars Did Wander Darkling. And he was fascinated by Stephen King when he was in 5th grade, and it feels like Stephen King for kids. It's so good. It's set up on the Oregon coast, back in probably around the time he was growing up. So I'd say the mid 80s, because the boys all hang out at a video store and debate beta versus VHS. But it's just so, like, I started reading it and I was like, I don't know if I can read this before bedtime. Maybe I'll just read it during the day. Nothing horrible happens, but it's that dread that goes with really good horrors, that this genre, even though, there's some things that happen, but for the most part, really it resolves okay. But I was just so wonderfully creeped out by it. Colin Malloy wrote the Wildwood Chronicles. He one of my favorites is The Whiz Mob and the Grenadine Kid, which is a standalone book. He's the lead singer and songwriter for the Decemberists. And so he has this great lyrical way of writing. And I think he did just a great job with this. So again, The Stars Did Wander Darkling by Colin Malloy. Okay, so I read books before they come out. I get the advanced copies. And sometimes when they come out, the covers are so disappointing. I'm like, oh, who's going to pick this up and read it? It just doesn't look great. This one is called Playing Through the Turnaround. And it's about middle school kids who are in the jazz ensemble. So they've been playing music in orchestra or maybe just standard jazz band, but they've been selected to be in the jazz ensemble. And they're different kind of breakfast clubby, different kids. Like they're all these different strengths they have. And there's somebody running for school board who is looking to cut all extra classes. And the way that they get brought into defending themselves and their classes, and then they realize also woodshop and home economics and all the things that they're involved in, the friendships are so good. And I'd already read it once, and I was looking at it again. It's not on your list. I just realized, Playing Through the Turnaround, by the way. It still made me want to cry last night. The friendships are so dear and feel so real, that I thought, and it's told in all of their various voices. So you get all the different kids. It's just really good. And they're also protesting and standing up against schools that aren't listening to them about what they want to learn. So I highly recommend this, even if you take the cover off. I mean, it's not that bad. It's kind of dumb. Playing Through the Turnaround by Mylisa Larson. And that will be in the store next week. This is part of a series. This is called Unsolved Mysteries or Unsolved Case Files. And I had it last year. There's one about escaping Alcatraz. There's one about the D.B. Cooper who parachuted out of the plane. This is the newest one. It's called the $500 Million Heist. It's about an art theft in the 90s where like 15 paintings were taken, including several Rembrandts, and it was $15 million. There's still to this day a $5 million reward. The things are all done in graphics and headlines and real documents from the case, but it's, again, so interesting to look at. And it's such a great series. I wish they would come out faster, because you get sucked in. You're like, I didn't even know this happened. And there's this $500 million art case, and it's really neat. So I would say it's probably for like a strong 3rd grade reader, but kids up to 6th and 7th would be interested in it just because it's something that really happened. There's theories. It's not solved yet. So the third in the series, $500 Million Heist by Tom Sullivan. And again, the first two are Alcatraz, which I need to order more of, and D.B. Cooper. So I hope you'll get the set of them, because I think kids will like them a lot. Then, speaking of sets of things, This is the third in the series. This is called If Tigers Disappeared. They did last year, they had If Bees Disappeared. And now I'm blanking on what the third one was. Oh, If Polar Bears Disappeared. And it really looks at the world going through climate change and how much difference it can make if simply one animal was no longer in the ecosystem. Like how could that affect everybody and what would that affect? They're really well illustrated. They talk about, see, it disappeared right into the floor. Look at that. Amazing. They talk about the world and where these creatures live, and still even being far away from here, how the loss of tigers would affect everybody. Not just because tigers are cool. So it's a really nicely done series, and it's by Lily Williams, If Tigers Disappeared. We'll have all three of them in the store next week. Okay. Graphic novels. I was delighted that this came out as a graphic novel. Bunnicula. Many people like Bunnicula. I think it's a great book. And although the art is not by the original artist, they managed to keep the feel for it. And if you've never read Bunnicula, it should be everybody should do a school-wide read at least once. The story's been around for 40 years, and it's the story of a family that have a dog and a cat. And one night they find this bedraggled, wet, ragged-looking rabbit in a rainstorm, and the dog and the cat are convinced it's a vampire. And they spend the book trying to prove or not prove. And it's so great. The dog's in a doofy dog voice, and the cat is sort of, mad at the world anyway. And it's ridiculous that it's so good. It's been published in, I think, 72 languages. It's a worldwide thing. But now they made it as a graphic as well. So you just can't go wrong with this book. I highly recommend it. Okay, this is called Growing Pangs. It came out about a month ago. It's by Catherine Ormsby. And it's just about growing up, being in school and having anxiety and dealing with the anxiety. At first, she's so embarrassed that, she needs to tap on something 3 times before she goes through a door, or she, if she does something wrong, she'll go back and redo something so her day will go okay. And when her parents are finally like, sweetie, we see this going on with you, and she feels so ashamed and embarrassed, and they're like, oh, everybody does stuff like this. This is really common. And they end up helping her. I think she does go and see a therapist, but they also end up helping her know that abnormal is normal. Like everybody has quirky things or things that they do. But I think there are probably a lot of kids that would read this and go like, I thought I was the only one that was like this, and I would never have told anybody. And here's an entire book devoted to this one character who meets all these other characters who also have anxiety and the way that they process things. So I thought it was important. It's drawn closer to all the babysitter clubs and all that sort of art. So I think kids will be sucked in really quickly. And she's a cool character. She just, she has a tough time with anxiety. Anyway, Growing Pangs by Catherine Ormsby. This one is called Try Out, and it's written by Christina, I can never say her last name, Soontornvant. She's gotten some Newbery honor books. This is about her story when she was in school and tried out to be a cheerleader, but she was the only non-white girl in her, I think it was in Texas, town, and how it went for her. It's really her story, but it also deals really well with feeling different, wanting to be a part of things, and maybe realizing that what you thought you were trying to be a part of isn't really what you thought it was at all. And so it's I don't know, I thought it was a very gentle way to study being different and how that might make people feel. So, and it's a graphic, so you can't go wrong. So Try Out. I'm going to do a couple of teen books because I know there's some teen people on here too. Don't worry, we'll jump around. This one's weird. I liked this book a lot. It's called, I have read these, I swear. It's called 3 Strikes Summer. And the general theme is it's about a girl in the late 30s, early 40s who wanted to play baseball. And of course, nobody would let her, but she was really good. But really the story is she's a Dust Bowl refugee. They're from Oklahoma, and they've moved out here to be crop pickers. And the amount of prejudice and unkindness that that all these families find, the unfairness, and realizing that we did this to people, we're still doing it now, but we did it to them back then when they needed help from everybody. And some people were kind, but most people took advantage and were unkind. It's stunning to read that and think, well, that was 80 years ago, so that's not so great. It's an easy read. She's a good character, and I ended up really liking it. And the baseball was just kind of to group it all together, but really it's about the canneries and the people and how like the company store where they had to do their shopping, so they couldn't ever get out of working for they always owed more money than they earned. But anyway, so I thought it was really good. 3 Strike Summer. The author is Skylar Shrimp, and I have to make sure I have that one in too by Monday. So that wasn't really a teen one, I lied, but it just came in yesterday. This is called The Snow Fell 3 Graves Deep, and it's about the Donner Party, and it's narrated by Hunger, and it follows all the different people who are in the Donner Party, based on their journals, based on what we know of them, following the line that they traveled, and it's really gripping. That story always really bothers me, and this doesn't pull any punches. I mean, it talks about people had died, and that's what they used for food. And Hunger as a narrator talks about how hunger wins everything. Like if you're hungry, you'll do whatever it takes to take care of yourself and to save yourself. I think there are kids that would be amazed by this story, because all the I Survived books and I Survived graphic novels, and even things like The Book Thief, which is narrated by Death, kids are used to that sort of really dark and compelling story. So literally this came in yesterday, so I read the first, I don't know, 80 pages last night, and then I had dinner because I was really hungry, and I felt really guilty for being hungry. But I thought it was there's an audience out there for this book. It is a teen book, just because the concepts are pretty grim, not because anything specific other than eating people. Just kidding. So it's called Voices from the Donner Party, and it's written by Alan Wolf. Okay, so this is a timely book, just right here. It's called Drawing the Vote, a graphic novel about the history of voting and and for future voters. And it just follows how voting started, what democracy is supposed to be, how it was, the Electoral College, how women had to fight for the right to vote. Nonsense. But it's fascinating. And again, because it's graphic novel, it's accessible for everybody, and it's been selling really well anyway. So I think, we're going to switch out one of the windows of the store this week to talk about making sure people are registered and talking about voting, and this will be in there. But it's, you read about things that are so unfair that we all, at my age anyway, we all lived through, and you're like, I didn't even know that was going on. And I think kids are much more connected, much more aware and curious now. So Drawing the Vote, written by Tommy Jenkins, illustrated by Katie Lacker, and it's great, very good. So that will be at the store. Just sort of a one-off that I thought was great. This is called Anatomy, a Love Story. It's about a young woman who wants to be a doctor in the 1800s, and she's obviously not allowed in medical school. She's trying to figure things out, so she works with grave robbers to get bodies so that she can practice on them. But it's really dark, but it's really good. It's been on the bestseller list, and the way she has to navigate. But again, it gets back to being treated as a second-class citizen for being female, when she's obviously smart enough to do the work and to learn everything. This is not a heart. This is a girl in a red dress all spread out. It took me a few weeks to notice that. But anyway, I liked it a lot. Reese Witherspoon apparently liked it as well, because it's part of Reese's book club. But that's not how we pick our books for Educator Night. Does anybody have any questions or want to unmute while I take a sip of my water and tell me anything that they need to know? Anybody? It is truly just water, unfortunately. Okay, this book just came in and I started it and really like it. It's called Anne of Greenville, like Anne of Green Gables, but modern. She's half Asian, she's queer, she's moved to a small town where nobody understands her, and yet she has the same positive attributes that Anne of Green Gables had. It's just sort of unflappable. Not that she doesn't get sad or hurt about things, but she's just like, well, we'll figure it out. She's very likable. And the worst part of this book for me was I realized I couldn't finish it until I got through Educator Night because I had other books I had to double check. I was really enjoying it. She has two moms. That makes her stand out in the town. She loves to roller skate. She has orange hair. And this town, my biggest question is why did they move there? But the mom moved there to take a job. But it's fun. Oh, and that's the other thing. Sorry, I just remember this part. She's describing the various towns she's lived in over the years, the small towns, big towns. She used to live in Petaluma, the character. She's like, Petaluma had 60,000 people in it, but it still felt like a small town, and it was very progressive for such a small town. It's like, she knows our town. So this is Anne of Greenville, written by Mariko Tamaki. And I think kids would really enjoy it. It's hard right now because there's so much stuff flooding the market with like queer characters, and I want to find the right ones. I don't want them, you could read all of them, but some of them are still just junk. Like all books are, not just that. So I'm trying to make sure we raise up the ones that are really well written and have good stories and aren't pandering just because they think there's a need for that. This book, back to kids books, this is called Violet and Jovi. It's by Lynn Ray Perkins, and it's both funny and heart-wrenching and brave. And I'm just going to read you a tiny bit about two mice. And they have this game they play where they live. They call it the cheese game. The snap of the cheese game was frightening if you weren't expecting it, or even if you were. Violet and Jovi stuffed tissue into their ears. Together, they lifted the snapping pole, then they moved into their assigned places. Jovi crouching in front, Violet reaching up behind him. It's gonna jump, said Jovi over his shoulder. His words were muffled by that tissue, but Violet knew what he was saying. He said the same thing every time. I know, she said. It always jumps. Are you ready? Asked Jovi. Ready, said Violet. Here we go then, said Jovi. Violet felt her brother's voice more than heard it, and as he said, 1, 2, ready, go. And on go, they thrust the pole forward. It found its mark, and the game snapped shut, flinging itself into the air and clattering back down. Even with the tissue, Violet and Jovi flinched on the sound and the jumpiness of it. They covered their faces and turned away to protect themselves from the snapping pole, which flung itself even wilder and higher. You never knew who that could come down, and it was pointy. But then, when everything had landed and was still, they feasted on cheese and peanut butter. They were both this time. It was a rich, salty, creamy combo. Violet looked around as she nibbled. They were in a box, which was a small room of sorts. It had been tricky to get the snapping pole inside, but now that they were here and the deed was done, it was nice, private, peaceful even. So as it turns out, they're in a box that has a lid put on it, and they're taken out in the country and dumped, and they stay together, but they get separated. And the way the story unfolds, it's so nice. I mean, it's funny and kind of wry, but it's also how you would contend with suddenly being on your own in an enormous world. And so I thought it made a lot of sense to me that kids would read this and even make the association with, like, what would it be if you're a refugee? What if, because she has to find friends and find her way and maybe not ever find her brother again. And I think that he doesn't die, but I just thought it was really a very good book. I even emailed Lynn Perkins and told her so, because I thought she did such a good job. So this is called Violet and Jovi in the Wild by Lynn Ray Perkins. Oh, this book I love. This is called, it's only in paperback, Secrets of an Undercover Activist. And these are kids who really want to get people to wake up and save the planet from climate change. And these kids are also pranksters. And so they do all sorts of things as disruptors to get attention and to raise their message. And, ends up they get involved in the school board elections or city council elections, because they realize that if they want to get involved, that pranking isn't just enough. But some of the pranks I will tell you, are great. They went to the Goodwill and they bought every old alarm clock they could find, and they set them each 1 minute apart and taped them under the chairs. And then in the middle of the assembly, when the principal will not take their questions about climate change, one by one, they all go off. Brilliant, brilliant. But I thought it was fun. It will encourage kids to play pranks, but more it shows another group of kids who are trying to embrace getting heard. And that's a theme that's been in several of these books, where adults are just not responding. They're just not listening to what the kids are saying, and the kids are out there living their life and knowing what's going on too. So I really, really liked it. Secrets of an Undercover Activist by Nat Amour. Okay, back to some picture books. This is called Lunch from Home. It's by Joshua David Stein and illustrated by Jing Lee. And it's just all these kids. It starts with one child who comes to school one day and she brings lunch from home, which is not peanut butter and jam, it's sushi. And all the kids around her are like, man, it's kind of weird. And the more that kids start watching and talking about, there's a boy named Ray, and he's the only kid who didn't have a sandwich. He had what he always had, a chopped up hot dog with scrambled egg and some melted cheese wrapped up in a tortilla like a burrito. And bit by bit, everybody's getting more and more self-conscious and becoming just like, they're all starting to bring in sandwiches, but they really don't like them. And finally one day, of course, somebody decides that she's going to bring what she wants for lunch. And pretty soon all the kids have like this great lunch table with foods from all over. And I mean, it's true. I mean, it's based on the lives of 4 real kids who grew up to be professional chefs, but as kids were kind of, teased because they had unusual food choices. And I think back to the fact that I always took mayonnaise sandwiches, just mayonnaise, there's nothing else. I thought mayonnaise sandwiches were really good. And my friends thought I was weird, and that wasn't even that obvious, so I could get away with it. But it could be a good discussion. It could be something to come up in the classroom, and you could talk about how different is good. Okay, this one is wordless. There we go. It's called I Forgive Alex. And it's a simple story about understanding, and it follows, so the same author, Kara Scott, I think, who created, or team of authors, who created the book I Walk with Vanessa, which was also wordless, but it shows a boy, and he's setting up, he's got all of his kids are on the playground, and some are playing basketball. This boy loves to do paints, and he's showing people these watercolors he painted. And then by mistake, the kid who's playing basketball comes over and hits the paints, and it destroys all the pictures. And everyone is mad at the boy with the basketball. And he's kind of isolated at lunchtime that day, and he feels bad, clearly. And our artist is sad. And so basketball boy is really, he sits by himself at lunch, and everybody's not talking to him. And even after school, he's walking home by himself. But the next day, the kid whose paintings got wrecked goes over and they shake hands, and they all kind of reconnect. And I think the idea that, making kids, it's very easy. I think adults are polarized. Kids are learning that message, and we don't need to have everybody be mad at everybody all the time. And if something happens, to just deal with it and forgive and move on is really important, especially when it's something that's unintentional. So I thought you could have a lot of good discussions around this, and because it's wordless, it's really fun to study what everybody's doing, and kids can tell the story themselves. You can follow along with what's happening, even if you don't read. So I Forgive Alex. Time, 7 o'clock. Okay. This little book made me so happy. It's called The Little Book of Joy. And it's written by the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu together. And they talk about each of them growing up in different sides of the world. And often they were sad or lonely or isolated. And then they noticed something beautiful, and they realized that if you focus on what's making you sad, then the sadness is all you see. But if you look around, you'll see that little bits of joy are everywhere, and the joy is something you can share too. And when you share it, more people feel it, and it helps push off things that are making you sad. I don't know. I just thought it was really very lovely and really true about being present in a, so he says, so look for the joy all around you and share it. Write it in a letter, play it on a drum, sing it to the sky. It will travel in the air and across the ocean, and someone will find it and share it. And as it spreads from person to person, the world will fill with joy. And, it'd be great if it were that simple, but it's great for kids to have that approach, I think. And so, look, our first quasi-religious book at Educator Night. No, but that's where it was in spirituality. I liked it a lot, and I think it would be a good message for kids all around. We're actually going to have a brief commercial in a minute. I'm going to play you a video. I didn't tell you that, James, but we are going to have a video play so that I can stop talking for a minute because I get so tired of my own voice. This book is called Bad Drawer or Bad Drawer, but it's actually Bad Drawer. And it's by Seth Fishman and his friends. And it's about a kid. It says, so here's the thing. I'm a bad drawer, like real bad. And I practice and practice, but it's like my hands can't hear my brain. And so he draws an example. He's like, see, the only thing I know how to make is a pine tree because it's basically scribbles. And I play soccer pretty okay. And I make the best cookies. And I know I'm good at math. Just a really bad drawer. And then he talks about his other friends who are both, well, first of all, he talks about his idea for a great story and how he can't possibly ever draw it and never comes out right. But he wishes he was as good as his friends at drawing. And he comes to realize that, they could collaborate. Maybe he could ask them to help in exchange, could bake them some cookies and make the coolest story together. And I like that because I think, some of us aren't good at drawing and that's okay. But I think that realizing that you can be like, okay, so I won't do the drawing part, I'll do the story part and we can work together. And that the people that illustrated this on each spread are different. Armand Baltazar, who's actually from Petaluma, but they each did a spread of what they can draw really well to sort of, be his friends who can draw. It's simple, but I liked it a lot because I think when we go to schools with authors, we'll ask kids, who here likes to draw, and all the hands go up. But the older they get, the fewer hands go up, and everybody starts judging themselves and not thinking they're good at it. And obviously, this won't change their lives, but it might help them think twice and realize that you can collaborate. And yeah. Anyway, this is the book by Max Greenfield he's gonna be here on Friday, called This Book Is Not a Present. I liked it partly. I gave it a lot of credence because the illustrator is one that I really like named Mike Lowry, and he illustrates like the MacB Kids Spy books, and he does really cool science books about sharks and the earth. I don't know. He's just got a cool style. So it's fun, it's funny, and that will be in a week. He also has another one that says, I don't want to read this book. I don't always like those. I don't like reinforcing that reading is not something you wouldn't want to do. But at any rate, he'll have two, and it's cute. Yeah, I'm going to see if I can share my screen. Now, this book came out last week. It's called The Three Billy Goats Gruff. Came out on Tuesday. It's by Mac Barnett, illustrated by John Clausen. It's retold by Mac, who thought that that story was never given the respect it deserved because it's such a good story. So they worked on it together, and then they hold on one sec. They called me and asked if possibly I could find them some goats to read to. And I said, it's Petaluma, so yes. And so they did that. And now,
hi, I'm Mac Barnett. I'm John Clausen, and today we're going to find out what actual goats think about our book.
Can you guys see that?
Three Billy Goats Gruff. Story time. These are called The Three Billy Goats Gruff. Once upon a time, there was a bridge, and beneath clip clop, went the bridge above his head. Who dares to walk across my bridge? It's only me, said the goat. A billy goat. My last name's Gruff.
This was mostly pencil and ink work, but there was some digital adjustment too.
Oh, no. You gotta look at the pictures too and just, okay.
I want to fight him. He's gonna win.
Who dare? Who dare? Who dares? I think he likes it. Right. Put this back. Okay. I think that went well.
So I enjoyed that. I got to be out there with him while we filmed it, and the fact that the goats really did try and eat the book made it very funny. We visited schools on Friday, and I sent that they filmed it on Saturday and released the video on Tuesday. I sent it back to the schools, and the kids have been watching it like crazy. And it's very funny. But the book itself, it's a great story. And I don't know, like for me, whenever you're out hiking and you cross a wooden bridge, I always think of trolls. I never don't think of this story. And so it's kind of fun to have an updated version that's funny and smart and beautifully, Mac can tell a story like nobody's business. His language is so great, and Sean's illustrations are beautiful, and yeah, just a ton of fun. So that's the 3 Billy Goats Gruff, and it came out on Tuesday, and it's been selling like crazy. Okay, this is a book called Does a Bulldozer Have a Butt? And very popular in the bookstore. Looking at, it's just observational. It's set in San Francisco, and it's a little girl walking to school with her dad, and she's like, Dad knows all these things. So does a bulldozer have a butt? And he's like, well, I mean, kind of, like it has an end, and then they start looking for butts everywhere. And it's very funny. It's not dumb humor. It's actually, do flocks of sheep have butts? Oh, they all look the same. Does a sundae have a butt? Yeah, if you put 2 scoops of ice cream together, kind of that creative way of looking at the world and finding butts everywhere. It's been surprising how many kids like it and how many parents aren't offended by it. So this is she used to live in San Francisco, illustrator K-Fi Steele. She lives now in the Netherlands, and Derek Wilder. And it's based on a conversation he had with his daughter one morning walking to school. So you would be surprised how many kids like this book, and then how many discussions you can have about butts. Getting back to some middle grade. This is Wild Oak. This just came out 3 weeks ago, I think. It's a girl who she's got a terrible stutter. Her father is not very understanding of stuttering. He thinks you can just stop it. And he threatens to, if she won't try talking in school, which is just overwhelming for her, that he'll send her to a special school. And her mom sort of intercedes, and they send her to spend a summer with her grandfather, whom she barely knows, in Wild Oak Forest. And it's there that she's not under the scrutiny of her classmates who make fun of her stuttering, and her grandfather, for being as crusty as he is actually very kind to her. And of all things, she stumbles across a snow leopard that was like what do you call it when it's a very fancy pet of somebody's that has been turned out because they couldn't deal with it. And so there's this wild snow leopard who does not know how to survive in the wild, and she's trying to protect it. And in the act of trying to protect somebody else, she gets braver herself. So it's by C.C. Harrington. It's gotten all kinds of press, and I usually resist those books that they're like, this will be a bestseller, because I don't like being told that. Although when I used to work in a record store, I didn't like the things. I had a great collection of one-hit wonders because I was always resisting the bestsellers. But I can see why it's so well liked, and I think kids will like the story and like her quest to be heard literally, and to protect somebody weaker and in more danger than herself. So that's Wild Oak. And then, wait, there are more. Kind of this also, when we used to do these with more presenters, we would always try and find a segue between books. Some of them didn't make sense. This book is by Jessie Ann Foley, probably like 6th grade and up. It's a girl who's really gotten in a lot of trouble at home. She's caught shoplifting again. and her mom is fed up. And I think she's a single mom, if I remember right. Anyway, she sends her to Ireland to spend the summer with her grandfather, who never even acknowledged her. And the mom's like, figure it out. I'm not gonna work with you. Go, single mom, I'm working all the time and you're getting in all this trouble. Go live with your grandfather. That's who brought me up, and you'll have to deal with it. And of course, he kicked the mom out when she was pregnant. So, but the writing is so good, and she's there, and she's kind of, actually kids are nice to her, and she's kind of figuring out a few things. And then she thinks she may have figured out who her father is, because she's never known him. I don't know. Jessie Ann Foley has written some teen books that I also really like. There's something in her writing style that's just, you're just right in the shoes of the character, and pulling for them and disappointed in them, and when they make dumb mistakes. And I still think it's so great that words written in a book can give you anguish, where you're like, oh, don't do this. It's amazing that somebody can make you feel that, but when they write so well, they can. So again, Brida's Island by Jessie Ann Foley. We got people 7:12. Don't worry, we won't be here all night, promise. I have not read this, it just came in, but kids love Alan Gratz, and he does all the, refugee and all those sort of World War II, Vietnam War books. This is about climate change, and kids read him just by his name. They'll just be like, okay, I'll read it. So I have not had a chance to read it. It just came in, but I guarantee you kids will want to follow up on it. It's about 3 climate disasters, 4 kids fighting for their lives. Akira is riding her horse in the California woods when a wildfire sparks and grows scarily fast. Owen and his best friend George are used to seeing polar bears on the snowy Canadian tundra, but when one bear gets way too close for comfort, do they have any chance of surviving? And Natalie hunkers down at home as a massive hurricane barrels towards Miami. And so right out of the headlines, that he's highly regarded by kids. So I think it would be a good addition to your library. This is Otter, the newest one by Catherine Applegate. She was here about 3 weeks ago, and kids now all want to be working at the Marine Mammal Center or working at Monterey Aquarium and saving otters. They love the story. It's told by an otter. It's very lyrical. It's free verse, and that sometimes I think that will discourage kids that are less confident in reading, and it doesn't. They've just embraced this book. They've checked out the maps. There's a map that shows where it all takes place. And Catherine Applegate can't do much wrong. There's also really cute drawings of otters. She somehow has figured out how to get messages in books without lecturing, and so kids are coming away from this and saying, like, well, we have to save the otters, and we have to save their environment. So if it's not already part of your school classroom library, it should be, because the otter is making a lot of friends right now. Oh, okay, back to books that have really bad covers, not that one did. I really, really like this book when I read the advanced copy, which is what this is. And I hoped that they would improve the cover. I don't love it. This is the cover. And it's called How to Succeed at Witchcraft, or is to Succeed in Witchcraft. And it follows our main, it's like high school, but witchcraft. So she's studying for AP potions and hoping to get into a good college, but has to, get good enough grades. She's kind of one of the top 2 students in the school. So she's really hoping for this one scholarship. She carries more magic with her than some people, but the author really thought out how it would work without it being fantastical. There aren't dragons, there's not Harry Potter. It's just magic is a course of study. And it's she's got somebody that she's very competitive against. She's got a best friend that graduated last year that isn't getting into any colleges. And she's got the guy who's in charge of the scholarship, who may or may not be grooming her a little bit. And she recognizes it. And so it's a lot of contemporary things, but also AP magic, AP potions is one of the tougher classes. I enjoyed it a lot, and I thought the characters felt really real to me. So this would be for high school. But also there's a queer love story, but it's not all that it's about. So it just feels like high school, but magic. How to Succeed in Witchcraft by Aislinn Brophy. This is a teen one that came out by Robin Benway, and she's won the Prince Award, I think, once for young adult literature. And it's really dealing with a girl in the aftermath of an accident that that killed her sister Nina. And as she wrote Far from the Tree, that was her other one. As the girl is trying to get her feet back under her and deal with the grief and loss and sorrow, she's not remembering a whole lot about it. And she's in therapy and she's trying to figure out why she doesn't know more about. She was in the car, but she wasn't killed, but her sister was. It's got some good twists, and actually it's compelling. So if you've got somebody that wants to read, it's not a murder mystery, but it's definitely a mystery. I thought it was good, and I thought it will appeal to some of those kids who are liking everything that's murder mystery right now. This book, A, I liked it. B, and I know it looks weird, she's got like dried flowers in her hair. My husband's reading it right now because we were on vacation together and he ran out of books, and I said, you should read this. He's like, I don't read YA. I'm like, it's good, it's really good, it's interesting. So it's a girl who lost most of her hearing when she was about 7 years old due to a violent interaction with her parent, who then went to jail. She's being raised by her aunt and uncle, who are just the coolest. And I think in my mind, her uncle is like the coach in Friday Night Lights. That's what he looks like in my head. Just a good, hardworking guy. But they live in the North Woods in the United States, and they're on a farm where they harvest, where they make maple syrup. They harvest from the trees. And it's fascinating. Like, it's fascinating what she does. Like, every day after school, they go out and they tap the trees and they check the taps and they do. And it's just, that to me was really appealing, without, again, it being lecturing about how people live. It's like, man, we forget how many different ways people live right here in the United States, and the hard work that they do if they're farmers. A boy, of course, comes to the area, the grandson of a neighbor, and he's working with them on the maple farm. But he's got some bad guys after him. This is a murder mystery. This is also gripping by the end of it. But also I really loved reading about it. She's an artist, and she loves photography and drawing, and she always is watching foxes because they live in the wilds, and they're seeing all these things. And just, it was a really compelling read. And again, it's still being read by somebody much older than it's intended for. So that's good. This is short stories. This also just came out. Our Shadows Have Claws, 15 Latin American monster stories, written by Julia Alvarez and Jenny Torres Sanchez, and a lot of the top writers for young adults right now. And it's all traditional monster stories written in their voices. I thought it looked really good. Again, have not had a chance to read more than one, which was creepy. But it's just so fun. And I also think any of these short stories that or short story collections that have different authors, it's just a gateway to that author. Like, if you really like it, you will be able to read that much more by them. And so it's a fun way to test out who you like. Our Shadows Have Claws. The collection's edited by Yamil Salid Menendez. And yeah, some of them are illustrated also. Got to go back to some picture books for a minute. Only about 80 over here. Okay, Sleuth and Solve. If you guys don't have these in your class or school libraries, this is the newest one that came out. This is the third. There's one on history. There's the original one. There's one on spooky, and this is on science. And on each spread, there are logic puzzles that present something you're going to try and figure out. They give you the solution, but they're like, how did they solve it? And kids love these. So this one just came out on Tuesday. And it follows all kinds, it sets you up, and then you read it and you're trying to figure it out. And if you don't know, you can lift a card and see what the answer is. But these sell like crazy, and I was so delighted there's a new one. So logic puzzles, I think, are really fun for kids, and kids really get them. I was trying to solve one, and a kid explained it to me. He's like, the flag is the same upside down. And I was like, oh, of course it is, or whatever the solution was. He was much wiser than I was. But I think they're good, and I know they're very popular. Okay, this is for 9-year-old me. Me loved dogs. This is the Atlas of Dogs. Every country, it's the breeds that come from there. It's just fun to pour over. Again, in your classroom when you've got, you know, SSR or something, you've got kids, they're going to pick this up and just go through and find out stuff about good dogs. And I really like the format. I like the way it's illustrated. And there are so many kids that come in, sometimes the books are too, you know, like what you'd find at the feed store. They're just about dogs, you know, or this is by Lonely Planet. So it gives you a whole, it talks about the countries they're in, why they use them there, how they use them. So highly like this book. And Atlas of Dogs. Tomorrow I have to carry these all back to the bookstore, in which I am not really. So that's super fun. This book came out last year, but after Educator Night, so I included it because I think it's so neat. It's African Proverbs for All Ages. And it just gives you, like, there'll be a spread, and it will give you a roaring lion kills no game. You could spend a day talking about what that means. And each spread has 4 quotes on it, so that it's artistically, it's beautiful. But a hunter with 1 arrow does not shoot carelessly. I mean, many hands make light work, but we know that one. Traveling is learning. I don't know. I thought I could see so many different ways you could use this and talk about things and figure out different ways that it applied to situations. And at the end, there's back matter that gives you the source of the quotes. And yeah, it's just beautiful. So again, African Proverbs for all ages. I think everyone should have that, in my opinion. This is very random, but I thought it was cool. It's the history of making movies. And kids are curious about that stuff, like how they originally got started with motion pictures, you know, stills and getting pictures to move. And I don't know, it will sit on the shelf undiscovered if I don't tell you about it. So I'm just telling you about it. It's called Action: How Movies Began by Megan McCarthy. And it's nice enough that I don't want it to get completely overlooked. So I wanted to show you that one. Oh, this is such a great book. I almost have the author and illustrator online for this, but I didn't pull it off, unfortunately. This is called The Whale Who Swam Through Time. And these two visited a couple schools for me over Zoom earlier this year. And it's about a bowhead whale. They're the longest living mammals. They live 200 years. And they follow what that would have been like for this whale, how his world would have changed from whaling ships that looked like that to avoiding actual submarines, and how ice flows break up, and how they keep adapting, and how important it is that whales are smart enough to adapt. And so they follow her for 200 years. And they're talking about now there's plastics in the ocean and very, very large boats. More ships mean more oil spills and fewer fish. Not all change is bad, though. A warmer Arctic brings more food and new whales. But they struggle to imagine what it'll be like, you know, in another 100 years. I just thought it was fascinating. And to think about, yeah, these creatures one creature has seen so much development and change. So it's beautifully done. They're whale scientists, but she happens to also be an illustrator. So they did this book together. The Whale Who Swam Through Time. Look at that. You can't even see it at all. How about there? And I can reach out to them and see if they might want to do another Zoom visit if anybody were interested, because I just think it was really cool and interested for many ages, not just, you know, not just the picture book world. So tired of my voice, you guys. Meanwhile, back on Earth, this is the latest by Oliver Jeffers, and he is he's talking about how, I think it was Neil Armstrong, somebody who came back after being far away and said, man, you get out there and you see how small we are, and you're like, why are you guys fighting? Like, we're barely, we should all be pulling together. We're alone in this universe. And so they have this fictitious drive to the moon and look back and see what Earth is like. It's not so big, not compared to space. So they go driving and they're like, okay, so it'll take almost a year to drive to the moon. All speeds and distances are calculated at 37 miles an hour, the average speed humans drive. On this trip, it's important to keep checking the mirror to see what we're up to back on Earth. So if we're already at the moon, it would be almost a year ago on Earth. And we'd see Earth much as we left it at the start of the 21st century, where everyone seems distracted and can't agree what to do next. We took a left turn at the moon toward the sun. It would be a 78-year drive from Earth to Venus, our closest planet. And meanwhile, back on Earth, 78 years ago, it was the middle of the 20th century. The whole planet was fighting, hopefully for the last time. And so he keeps going further and further out. Every time he looks back on Earth, oh God, we're fighting, even 2,000 years ago. It's just, it's a nice reminder, like we have so much more in common than we have differences, especially when you get that far away and look back. His books are always fun, and it's a fun idea to think about what it would be like to drive that far and what would change behind you. So again, this just came out on Tuesday, Meanwhile Back on Earth by Oliver Jeffers. Back to a couple of teen books. Middle grade books. This is, I really like Amy Sard King. She writes usually under A.S. King, but for middle grade, she uses her whole name. And this is some kids who are going to, for their book club in school, their group is going to be reading Jane Yolen's The Devil's Arithmetic. And as they start reading it, they realize that some words are just like blacked out, like you can't read them. And they live in a town where there's starting to be book censorship, and there's, dress codes, and they're just getting a lot of rules. And so they go to the library to see what words were blacked out. They're like, well, they blacked out the word breasts, but it's a little girl who covers her breast while she's walking. It's not even about breasts. And they start trying to figure out who's doing the blacking out. It turns out it's the English teacher, and she's censoring all the books. And how they go about fighting, also, again, getting people to listen to them. And somebody really cool shows up at the end of the book who stands up with them. But it's it doesn't read as well as her other books to me. I was a little bit detached from it, but I still love the talk about censoring books. I mean, I think kids will like it. I was feeling very judgy when I read it, I guess. But I thought it was good in this moment where we're having so many rules laid down and things you can't do and books you can't read and things you can't, Disneyland is not okay and all that. It was these kids are experiencing it and writing about it, and I thought it was cool. So Attack of the Black Rectangles by Amy Sard King. Oh, we're so on theme. This is called The Year the Maps Changed. It's set in Australia, but what it is that this little Australian town is taking in refugees from Kosovo, and how many people welcome them and how many people don't, and how many people, like, they put up a refugee camp on the outside of town, and then pretty soon they have to stay in the refugee camp. They can't come out. And just as these kids try to navigate, what they're seeing is really churlish behavior by the adults. The main character is just sort of an interesting setup. Her name is Fred, and when she was born, she didn't know her dad, but her mom remarried. She was raised by this great guy, and her mom died. So her dad is not really her dad. And when he's gotten involved with a partner now, and she's like, man, where do I even fit in? So she is feeling a bit like the maps around her own personal life are changing, even as the maps in the world are changing. And she's trying to navigate both. It was really good. I liked it a lot. So now that setup sounds kind of complicated, but The Year the Maps Changed by Danielle Banks. And although it's set in Australia, it could be here for sure. This was the #1 New York Times bestseller list not too long ago, like a month ago. It's called The Midnight Children. He came and visited 3 schools. He's really an inspirational talker for kids. He does a very, very good job. And my biggest complaint with this book is that it's got this boy who's capturing fireflies, and it looks kind of magical. Like, it's not what books. This book could be written by Lemony Snicket. These guys live in a small town called Slaughterville. The main industry is the slaughterhouse. There are bullies, and there's a group of 7 orphans who are hiding out nearby in an old house. And this local kid who gets to know them, and he's like, oh my God, finally friends and people that aren't bullying me. We visited one school, and the librarian was, I'm a little concerned about this because they do go in the slaughterhouse. And I said, I think you just have to, if it were Lemony Snicket, you'd have no issue. So it was good, it was compelling. The more I read, the more I liked it. And as my daughter always points out, if I finish them, it's a sign that I really like them. My husband points out if they make it upstairs next to the bed, it's also a sign that I really like them. So The Midnight Children by Dan Gemeinhart, we've got these in stock, and I liked it. I just, man, if I were in charge of the cover art, I would have done something different. This one is called Chester Keene Cracks the Code. Chester is it's by Kikla Magoon, and Chester is getting all these different, he lives with his mom, doesn't have a ton of friends. He hangs out at bowling alley in the afternoon where his aunt works. But he's really good at bowling and all the games that they play there. And somebody starts leaving him coded notes, and he meets this girl who's also at the bowling alley, and they start solving them together. And it was really nice. Plus, books with puzzles in them are so cool, and you can try and help him solve them. I enjoyed it a lot, and thought that a lot of kids would want to be also solving these codes. Okay, get right down there. Don't worry, you'll get to have dinner soon. Billion Dollar Girl is by Megan Shull. She wrote the book Swap and the book Bounce. She's a great writer, and she's really easy to just get sucked into a story. She's got a good voice for her kids. This one is a girl who lives in a pretty abusive situation with her mom and whoever her mom is dating at the time. And she doesn't know her mom's family, but she finally, to protect herself from the situation, she runs away and then goes to the island where her mom's family lives. And this island is actually, I think it's up by Bainbridge Island. And so now I'm not sure that's true. That's where I pictured it, but it's a real place. And it's like amazing nature that's been untouched. And the people that live on this island in real life have learned to live with it and not change it. And so this girl finds out that's where her real family is. And she's so happy to be with people who treat her kindly and who teach her about appreciating nature. And then her mom comes to get her, and then they win the lottery, which is really weird, but it does play into the story. So it's a good book, and it's definitely about nature and climate change and protecting the world we live in, and all the ways that they do that on the island are really cool. Megan writes a good book. I think girls in particular would like reading this because the girls, she's looking out for herself. I don't know about winning the lottery, but I still think it was really good. Almost came off the list because I'm like, I don't know, would you really win the lottery? Not likely. This is a teen one. This is called Creep, a Love Story. And it's about a girl who works in the attendance office at the high school, and she's fascinated by these 2 senior students who are a couple, and she thinks they're amazing. And she starts sort of absorbing their lives. She follows them. She thinks they're neat. She does them favors. So they start kind of taking her like to parties and stuff with them because they kind of like her, but she becomes obsessed. So for all of it's called Creep, a Love Story. So for all of your students who are enjoying all the dark murder mystery stories, of which there are a lot right now, this is a good one. And the setup is so, she says, I could watch them together all day, maybe forever. They're that beautiful. I wish I could. So there you go. Good creepy story. Okay, 4 more, and then you can go have a glass of wine or whatever. This is another teen one. I much liked it. It's called This Place Is Still Beautiful. two girls who are both her sisters. They're both Asian American. One favors particularly looking more Asian, the other one has red hair. And so one leaves to go away to college and the other one still lives here. And they're in a small town and they start seeing signs of racism, particularly post-pandemic. And just kind of how they're navigating it, that like the older sister's like, just don't react, and it will go away. And the younger sister's like, don't react, they've sprayed slurs on our garage door. Like, of course I'm going to react. And the newspaper picks it up and then that makes it worse, not better, and all figuring it out. But also the girl is like, this is also my hometown. Like, I still love my town. This place is still beautiful. So I thought it was just timely and a good read, and being on the inside of having racism directed at you, and what's the best way to deal with it. And there's no like specific answer, but she's definitely trying to figure it out. So I thought it was really well written. The author's name is, I think it's Zizi, it's XI, Zizi Qian, and I think kids would like it a lot. Okay, this one came out earlier this year. Some of you probably already have it. The Ogress and the Orphans by Kelly Barnhill. Kelly won the Newbery Award 2 years ago for the book whose name just left my brain. Hold on. The book, The Girl Who Drank the Moon. And I like this so much better. That book was not my fave, even though it won awards. So there you go, me again, not liking the award winners. But it's a village that's has an orphanage where people are actually kind to the orphans. And outside of town, there's an ogress who lives, and she's got a garden. And the way the town starts, they have a mayor in the town who's kind of grandiose, and he's a big talker, and he always has great plans, and he kind of sways a lot of people to his way of thinking, and he's actually really a not nice guy. And he turns people against the ogress. And she's been taking care of the town for years. She leaves them baked goods. Her vegetable gardens always produce, and yet it gets harder and harder for the ogress to exist. The orphans recognize that she's kind, but the town is being fake newsed out about her. So that was great. It was a beautiful book. So The Ogress and the Orphans, and of course, in this case, good prevails. All right, two more, you guys. This one is called We Are All Neighbors. It's a follow-up to last year's All Are Welcome. And there it is. It's a nice book, and it's a reminder that we celebrate the things that we have in common, and it's also very fine that we're all different, because we're all neighbors and we all live in the same darn planet that Oliver Jeffers was writing about. So I guess there's a theme this year. At any rate, I thought it was a nice addition for libraries to go with that one from last year. And then 740, not bad. The pigeon has to go to school. If you have anybody reluctant to go to school, I highly recommend that you read this to them, because the pigeon figures it out. Not only does the pigeon figure it out that it's pretty cool to go to school, but at the end of the book, he realizes that this is how he gets to school. He has to ride a bus, and he's pretty excited. Talking about callbacks, it works really well. Mo Willems keeps coming up with them. They're always amazing. One section that I didn't bring any samples of is both the early reader graphic novels and the early reader chapter books. There are so many good ones. There are equally as many junky ones, but I'm really happy to show you what works and what doesn't. The graphic novel division for early readers is expanding, and so there are a lot of good stories there. Like Magic Treehouse is now a graphic novel, and Babysitter's Little Sister is now a graphic novel. The Kingdom of Renly now has a Dragons of Renly spinoff that's graphic, because they're recognizing that that's entry into reading, and if that's what kids want, they'll get it done. So we have a whole section of those emergent readers, which are the Elephant and Piggy or Mac Burnett's Hijack books. That section is growing, so we have so much great stuff for kids who are learning to read and just emerging, and I think the leveled readers are kind of going by the wayside because there's so much better content out there for kids. So We have all those in the store. And yeah, I think I'm going to kind of wind up. I mean, our recap is, we had Liz Garton Scanlon here, which is amazing because I've always loved her books. And Deborah Underwood is, I kind of know her, but mainly from following her on Facebook. So it was really fun to have her here in person. We have Educator Shopping Night on Monday, the 24th from 7 to 9. You can certainly come earlier, but you'll have the store to yourself after 7. We have the Handsome and Articulate, we hope, Max Greenfield next Friday night, presenting his book called A Book Is Not a Present. I have a book on Namaste is a Greeting. I have that author coming through on the 15th, and we'll be offering that out for school visits. And then I've got some great school visits starting up again in January. Anything else we were going to talk about? I have a telemarketer calling me. That's exciting. Wait, one more thing. Oh, money for schools. Shop up, man. Make money off your parents. You don't have to do anything. If they don't shop, nothing happens. But at least if they do, you get some money from them. Kids book reviews. I'll send out a sign-up sheet for that. That will start in January after holiday break. And banned book reviews is ongoing, and we can encourage you to do that. And we love having them up in the window. And then finally, the Bookstormer site that Jamie put in our chat earlier. If you are a Title I school and you'd like to try and have us come see you sometime, sign up. It's easy. It just helps me keep a list of where I haven't been. And if you're sitting on piles of wealth left to you by an ogress, and you want to donate to Bookstormer, you're also welcome to do that. That's all I have for you tonight. Does anybody have any questions? I haven't been watching the chat, but I see there's some stuff in there. Student who went to Adam Silvera who's been asking me, oh, how did I not have that? Yeah, the first to Die at the End, the Adam Silvera book, is amazing. He was here and he went to Casa Grande. It's the first time we've had a successful YA author visit in a long time. And it's nothing against high school. It's just that it's harder to get a time slot where I can guarantee the publisher that'll have enough kids to make it worth their while. Adam was great. And as somebody said, right as they were leaving Casa, Adam's like, he's 6'3", he's proudly queer, he's an amazing author, he's really articulate. This guy came up to him and said, "You're one hot motherfucker, and I'm straight." And then he left. So there you go. It was fun. So yes, about having more YA visits. I want to do more. I do think it's important. And I'm starting, what happens is right now, I'm writing requests for authors that will be being toured in late spring. And so I have been asking for more young adult authors because that one went so well, but I won't know until we get closer to spring if they're going to send anybody our way, because it's kind of reawakening that program that we hadn't been doing for a while. But a lot of people are being toured in the spring, and I think it'll be great. I mean, imagine there's some great people on tour. I hope we get. So we will definitely let you know. And then what helps me is at the high schools, if you're with the high schools, is to think about even now, how would you manage a visit to get as many classes there as possible? Because I always have to tell them how many books I think I'll sell and how many kids will be attending. And I'm always making it up, but it's a lot harder to be even quasi right for high school. I can usually nail it for elementary and junior high. So, but yeah, we'll do more author visits. You guys, you've listened so much. You get to go have some wine, go have something nice to do. Come see us on Monday night. Email me directly at copperfields.pedluma@gmail is just me. So you can email questions to that, and I'm happy to answer them. I think that's it. I think we're good.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. The authors were lovely to
hear. Very sweet.
Thank you. That's always, thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. And this has been recorded, so we will share it if people want to, that couldn't come, that and they want to hear me yammer for almost 2 hours. You can listen to it at 1.5 speed. Just kidding. All right, you guys, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good night.